Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Toby Talks. I'm your host, Toby Hoy. And if this is your first time here, let me just say that I'm genuinely glad that you found us. This show is all about practical ideas for building better organizations and becoming more effective leaders. And we try to do that without drowning you in jargon or making things harder than they need to be. Today, we're going to do another deep dive on a single concept, one framework, one tool, and we're going to walk through it completely from what it is to where it came from to how you actually use it when it matters. That tool we're talking about today is SWOT analysis. And before anyone tunes out because they've heard that term before, let me just make you a promise. By the end of the episode, you're going to understand it differently than you do right now. Not just what it is, but how to use it, when to use it, and what to do with the results once you have them. Because here's the thing about SWOT analysis. Most people do it wrong, not because they're not smart and not because the framework is complicated. It's because somewhere along the way, the doing became more important than the thinking. People fill in the boxes and then they feel like they've accomplished something strategic, but then nothing changes. And we're going to fix that today. We're going to do that using a very specific and very delicious example. Toby's Taco Truck, a one-man band food truck that specializes in, and I'm not exaggerating here, the finest tacos on wheels. Throughout this episode, we're going to use that business to bring every concept to life because honestly, tacos make everything better, including business strategy. All right, so let's get into it. To really understand how this works, we need to start at the beginning. What is SWOT analysis? When I say SWOT, it's SWOT. And SWOT stands for four things: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The purpose of the framework is to give you a structured, honest picture of where your business or organization stands before you make a major decision. Now, the word in that last thought, structured, is doing a lot of the work in that sentence because here's the reality. Most business owners are already thinking about their strengths, their weaknesses, what opportunities might be out there, and what could go wrong. They're just doing it in their heads and in no particular order. And that's all then mixed in with emotions and hopes and fears and dreams. SWOT analysis takes all of that swirling, unorganized, chaotic thinking and puts it into a container, four specific boxes. And when you force yourself to separate those four things, something clarifying happens. You stop thinking about your business the way you feel about your business, and you start thinking about it the way it actually is. That shift from feeling to clarity is where the value in this entire conversation lives. Now, the framework splits it into two halves: strengths and weaknesses that are internal factors. Those are things happening inside of your business or organization, the things you have control over, or at least some influence over. Are you good at customer service? Well, that's internal. Do you have a cash flow problem? That's also internal. Is your team understaffed? That's internal. Now, opportunities and threats, on the other hand, are external factors, things that are happening in the world around the business that you don't have control over, but absolutely affect you. Is there a new neighborhood development going up a couple blocks away from your regular spot? That's external. Are ingredient costs for your taco truck rising around the industry? That's external. Did a competitor just move into your territory? Also external. The genius of the framework, if I can use that word for something that's this simple, is that it forces you to think about both dimensions at the same time. A lot of business owners only look inward. Things like, what are we good at? What do we need to work on? Other business owners only look outward. What's happening in the market? What should we be worried about? SWOT makes you do both and see how those two dimensions connect. So let me give you a quick visual. Imagine a simple 2x2 grid, a big square with a cross in the center of it. The top row contains the internal factors. The bottom row contains the external factors. The left column is the good stuff, the things working in your favor. And the right column is the challenging stuff, the things that are working against you. You fill in the 4 boxes and you've got your SWOT. So those 4 quadrants, the top lefts are the strengths, what's working for you internally. And the top right are the weaknesses, what's working against you internally. Bottom left are opportunities, what's working for you in the outside world. And then bottom right are the threats, what's working against you in the outside world. That simple grid, that's the whole framework. Genuinely, the value isn't in the complexity because there isn't much of it. The value lies in the honesty and the follow through. And we're going to talk a lot about follow through today because that's where most SWOT analysis absolutely just die. So this wouldn't be a Toby Talk if it didn't have a little bit of history in it, because I think knowing where a tool comes from and how it was developed helps you honestly use it better. SWOT analysis was developed back in the 1960s and early 70s at the Stanford Research Institute. A management consultant named Albert Humphrey led a research project that sought to answer one simple question: why does corporate long-range planning fail so consistently? That may not sound simple, but it is. And what they found was pretty humbling. Most major companies were building strategic plans based on what their leadership wished was true rather than what was actually true. They were overestimating their strengths and underestimating weaknesses and chasing trends that weren't real opportunities for their specific business, and then also dismissing threats until those threats became crises. So the research team put together a planning framework to fix that. It went through a few iterations, as most good things do, and the original version was called SOFT analysis, which stood for satisfactory, opportunity, fault, and threat. And that got refined over time into the SWOT that we use today. By the 1980s, the concept had spread through business schools and consulting firms across the country. By the 90s, it was essentially the standard issue tool for any strategic planning conversation, from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofit boards to small business workshops to a simple taco truck down on the current corner of 3rd and Joint. The reason it has lasted 60 plus years is not that it's sophisticated. It's the opposite of sophisticated. It's lasted because it works, because it's accessible, and because the discipline that it builds, the honest self-assessment before decision-making, never goes out of style. That being said, history lesson is over. Let's get back to the tacos. And now we get to the part where we roll up our sleeves. We're going to walk through building an actual SWOT analysis step by step using Toby's taco truck as our example. Here's a little background on Toby's taco truck. It's been rolling for about 2 years, single truck, owner-operated business with a solid reputation and a fiercely loyal following. Business has been good, and now Toby is thinking about adding a second truck. Should he do it? That's the question that we're going to answer together. That question, by the way, is the first thing that you need to establish before you do anything else. A SWOT analysis without a specific question is just a list of things about your business. It might be interesting, but it won't be strategic. You need a decision to orient around. Should I expand? Should I launch a new product? Should I pursue a partnership? Should I open a second location? The question focuses your thinking, and it tells you what's relevant and what isn't. Our question today for Toby's Taco Truck is, should I add a second food truck? Everything that goes into our SWOT today will connect back to that question. So let's go through each quadrant. We'll start in the upper left with the strengths. And again, these are the internal advantages that you bring to the decision, the things that you do well, resources that you have, or qualities that make you better than the alternative. Here's the filter that I want you to use when you're building this list. Would a customer confirm this strength without you telling them? If a customer walked up to your taco truck and you ask them, hey, why do you keep coming back? Would their answer match what you wrote down? If that answer is yes, then you've got a real strength. If you're not sure, you need to dig deeper before you write it down. For Toby's Taco Truck, the real strengths might include things like a signature recipe for barbacoa that people genuinely talk about, not to mention the chicharron, or 2 years of operational experience that has taught Toby exactly how the business runs. Number 3 on the strengths list might be a strong local reputation backed up by consistent reviews on Yelp and Google. The flexibility of a mobile operation and a personal brand that has built a genuine community connection. Notice that these are all specific. They're not things like, well, we make good food. That's not a strength. That's an expectation. A real strength is we have a line down the block every Friday because people specifically seek us out. That is something that you can build a strategy around. So we'll move to the top right and get into the weaknesses. And this is honestly the hard one, and I mean that. It's the quadrant where most business owners either skip the real stuff or they just bury it with reassuring and fluffy language. I want you to think about the weaknesses as the things that are keeping you up at night, not the comfortable weaknesses, the ones that you're happy to say aloud in public, the real ones, the ones that you know about but don't like admitting. For a lot of small business owners, and Toby here is no exception, the biggest weakness is the dependence on the founder. If Toby gets sick, the truck doesn't run. That's not a minor operational note. That's a structural vulnerability, and it becomes dramatically more serious the moment that you try to come to scale. For Toby's Taco Truck, honest weaknesses might look a little something like this. The entire operation depends on one person. Number 2, that there might be limited capital for expansion. There's only so much profit margin on a taco. Number 3 could be that there are no documented systems or processes. It's just a wing it every single day. Number 4 might be that Toby has no experience managing employees, which having a second truck would require immediately. Each of those weaknesses directly relates to the question of whether or not to add a second truck. And that's exactly what should happen. Here's a quick test for whether you've been honest enough in your weaknesses section. If your best competitor read that list, would they be surprised by anything? Or would they think, well, yeah, we already know that? If there's nothing on your weakness list that would make you a little uncomfortable to share, you haven't finished writing it yet. Dig deeper. So we'll flip to the positive side, the opportunities, things that are happening out there in the world that you could potentially take advantage of. Market trends, demographic shifts, or gaps in the competitive landscape. New technologies or changes in consumer behavior are all potential opportunities. The key word being potential. An opportunity is only an opportunity for your business if you are actually positioned to capture it. Otherwise, it's just an interesting fact about the world. Here's the distinction that I want you to focus on. A trend is not an opportunity. Food trucks are popular is a trend, but it tells you almost nothing useful. An opportunity is when you can say, here's a specific thing happening in the world, and here's how my specific business is positioned to benefit from it, and here's roughly what I would need to do to capture that benefit. For Toby's Taco Truck, the opportunities might look a little something like this. Number 1, there's a new mixed-use development going up a few blocks away, bringing in potentially hundreds of potential customers to the area within the next year. Number 2, 2 major local festivals are actively looking for quality food vendors and are currently underserved. Number 3 on the list, a local catering company just closed their doors, and that left a gap in the small event catering market. Number 4, the food truck industry as a whole is growing with increased consumer preferences for local street food experiences. Each of those 4 things is specific enough to act on. That is the standard for an opportunity. And our 4th quadrant, bottom right, are the threats. These are the external forces that could hurt your business, competitors, regulatory changes, economic conditions, market shifts, rising costs. The goal in this section isn't to be Chicken Little with the sky falling, or to catastrophize or scare yourself into decision paralysis. The goal is to see clearly so that you can plan accordingly. A threat you know about is a threat you can prepare for. For Toby's Taco Truck, the threats could look something like there were 2 new food trucks focused on Mexican cuisine that launched in the same city in the past 6 months. Number 2 could be that ingredient costs have been rising, which further compresses the margin on those tacos. Number 3 could be that the city is considering some new permitting regulations that could increase operating costs and restrict available locations. And number 4, that the labor market is tough, means potentially a problem if you've got to hire employees for drivers, prep cooks, and the like. Now, here's something important about threats. Not every threat deserves the same level of attention. A competitor moving in down the street is a real immediate concern. A possible regulatory change that might happen in the next 2 years is worth monitoring, but it's probably not what should keep you up at night. I like to think about threats through 2 different lenses. How likely is this to actually happen, and how bad would it be if it did? Things that have a high likelihood and a high impact, that needs a plan right now. Things with a low likelihood or a low impact, just stop worrying about it. It's not a threat. The middle cases where something is unlikely but potentially devastating, those are worth a basic contingency plan, like an insurance policy that you hope you never need. All right, so we've got our grid, we've got all 4 quadrants filled in, and here is where most people stop. But here is where the real strategic thinking begins. The piece of paper with the grid and the filled in boxes isn't the output, it's the raw material. What you do with that next is what determines whether this exercise was worth anything at all or any change actually happens. The move is to look at those 4 quadrants in different combinations. Each pair of quadrants points at a different strategic question, and together, those questions give you a complete picture of what you need to do next. The first combination are the strengths and the opportunities. This is your offense. Where can you deploy what you're good at to take advantage of what is happening in the world around you? For Toby's Taco Truck, that combination might look a little something like this. Toby's strong community reputation and loyal following, combined with the festivals actively seeking vendors, suggests that applying for those festival spots is a smart, low capital move to test expanded operations before committing to a full second truck. The second combination of quadrants are weaknesses and threats. This is your most exposed intersection. Where does something that you're already struggling with line up with something coming at you from the outside? For our taco truck, the lack of documented systems combined with the new competition entering the market creates some real vulnerability. If Toby can't eventually replicate what makes his truck great at scale, a well-funded competitor with a better infrastructure could start eating into that loyal customer base over time. The third combination are strengths and threats. How do your strengths protect you from that external pressure? Toby's personal brand and direct community relationship are things that a new competitor can't replicate overnight. That's a moat. Lean into that. More community events, deeper customer relationships, maybe a loyalty program are all smart defensive moves. And the fourth combination, weaknesses and opportunities. Where are you missing the capability to capture growth that's available to you right now? The catering gap left by the recently closed company is a real opportunity, but Toby has no systems, no staff experience, and limited capital. That opportunity requires building some capability before it can actually be captured. Knowing that, Toby can decide whether to invest in those capabilities now or just let that particular opportunity pass for the moment. When you look at all 4 combinations together, a clear picture starts to emerge. And from that picture, you can identify the 3 things that most deserve your attention right now. Not 10, 3. For Toby's Taco Truck, after this analysis, the 3 priorities might be: number 1, to spend 30 days documenting all core processes and systems as a prerequisite for any kind of growth. Number two, to begin conversations with the festival organizers to test expanded operations at a relatively lower risk. And number three is to start monitoring the city's new permitting regulations before they become a potential problem. Three priorities, specific actions, real connection to the analysis. That's the output a SWOT is supposed to produce. Before we wrap this up, I do want to run through 5 mistakes that I see business owners make with SWOT analysis, because avoiding those will save you a lot of wasted effort. Mistake number 1 is doing it alone. Your perspective on your own business is valuable, but it's incomplete. Get your customers, your employees, or a trusted advisor into the conversation. People who interact with your business from the outside will often see things that you just can't. Mistake number 2 is listing too many things. More things in the boxes does not mean a better analysis. It usually means an unfocused analysis. 3 or 4 high quality items in each quadrant beat a long list of everything you could possibly think of on any day of the week. Mistake number 3 is treating this as a one-time thing. Your business changes. The market changes. A SWOT done 18 months ago may be completely out of date. You need to revisit it every 6 months or so and refresh it whenever a major decision sits in front of you. Mistake number 4, and we touched about this earlier, is confusing table stakes for strengths. Things like, we use fresh ingredients, is not a strength for a food truck. That's just being in the game. A strength has to be something that can genuinely differentiate you from your alternatives, not what everybody else does. What you do that nobody else does or does well, that's a strength. And mistake number 5, which is the one that I want to leave you with, is treating the SWOT as the destination. I said this earlier and I'm saying it again because it matters. A SWOT that doesn't lead to decisions and action is just an expensive journaling exercise. Schedule the follow-up, assign the priorities, put dates on things, and check in regularly. The SWOT is the map. You still have to drive the truck. So it's the end of the shift, and let's put our truck in the garage. SWOT analysis is one of the most practical strategy tools in existence, not because it's complicated, but because it forces you to be honest before you act. It's 4 questions. What are you good at? Where are you falling short? What opportunities are out there? And what threats are knocking on the door? Build those 4 things around a specific decision and be honest, especially in the weaknesses section. Pull in outside perspectives. Look at those 4 quadrants together to identify your priorities. And then, and this is the particular part that really matters, do something with it. Toby's Taco Truck isn't a Fortune 500 company. It's a one-person food truck, but it has a strategic picture. And understanding that picture clearly is what separates businesses that grow intentionally from ones that just hope for the best. To put it another way, think before you roll. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today on Toby Talks. If this episode was useful for you, I would genuinely love it if you shared it with somebody who could use it. Leave a comment down below on whatever platform that you're watching or listening from. It really helps more people find the show, and I'll see you in the next one.